The grand hall of the Ophalar Palace shimmered with silver light. Tall crystal pillars rose to the ceiling, where a great dome reflected the galaxy above. Hundreds of alien leaders stood in silence, their glowing robes flowing like rivers of starlight. It was the day of the Interstellar Summit, a rare meeting where the most powerful rulers of known space came together. At the center of the hall, on a raised platform, stood Queen Serenia of Ophalar. She was a towering figure, her skin a deep shade of iridescent violet, her long silver hair braided with strands of living crystal. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the crowd with the calm control of someone used to ruling with absolute authority. And in her arms, she held her infant son, the Crown Prince. The child was beautiful by Ophalar standards, small, delicate, with skin like polished pearl. But at this moment, his face was red, his small mouth wide open as he screamed with a sound that made the very air shiver. It was not the normal cry of a baby. It was sharp, almost painful, as if the sound carried invisible claws scratching inside the mind. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, others winced. The cry seemed to push into people's thoughts, making their skin crawl. Elias Grant, the only human in the room, stood near the edge of the platform, watching. He was there as a cultural liaison, someone meant to represent Earth's customs and build friendly ties. He had expected political speeches, ceremonial toasts, and maybe a quiet diplomatic dinner. He had not expected this. The baby's cry grew louder. The sound echoed off the crystal pillars like waves of glass breaking. Two royal attendants stepped forward, each carrying strange alien instruments, soft glowing orbs and shimmering threads that produced soothing hums. They tried to comfort the child, but the wailing only grew more intense. "I don't understand," one attendant whispered, panic in her voice. "Nothing is working." Queen Serenia's jaw tightened. She was known across the galaxy for her cold, steady composure. She had negotiated peace treaties while enemy fleets were in orbit. She had silenced entire courts with a single raised eyebrow. But now, before the watching galaxy, her control was slipping. The Crown Prince thrashed in her arms, his tiny hands clawing at the air, his eyes wild. Elias noticed something strange. A faint pressure in his head, like someone knocking on the inside of his skull. Telepathic, Elias realized. The child wasn't just crying, he was projecting his distress into everyone's minds. That's why the aliens looked so uncomfortable. That's why Elias could feel the heat behind his eyes. Another alien healer approached, this one carrying a crystal rod that pulsed with calming energy. It was supposed to soothe telepathic storms. The baby wailed even harder, and a few guests clutched their heads. The queen's shoulders tensed. The Ophalar were not an emotional species. They valued precision, order, and logic. Public displays of feeling were considered primitive. And here was their queen in front of the galaxy, unable to calm her own. "Air!" Then the queen's voice rang out, deep and sharp. "Enough," she said, silencing the healers. "If my son cannot be soothed by my people's methods, then we must try something else." She turned to the hall, her voice carrying the weight of command. "I offer this. If any being in this hall can calm the Crown Prince, I will grant them any reward they ask. Land, title, wealth, even my own hand in marriage." The hall froze. Hundreds of alien eyes blinked in disbelief. The Ophalar queen had just offered her hand in marriage, something almost unthinkable. She was not only ruler of the most disciplined empire in known space, but also the single most powerful political figure in 3 star systems. Elias's heart skipped. He glanced around. Several alien nobles stepped forward but hesitated. No one wanted to fail in front of the queen. The baby's cries sliced through the silence again, vibrating in Elias's skull. He saw the attendant's hands trembling, the Noble's discomfort, and something inside him stirred. He took a step forward, then another. A few aliens gave him strange looks. A human? Trying this? Humans were still considered a young species in galactic politics, useful sometimes, but unsophisticated. Elias ignored them. He approached the Queen slowly. Her gaze was piercing. "You," she said, her voice low, "you think you can succeed where my best healers have failed?" "I don't know," Elias admitted, "but I've dealt with crying babies before. Not telepathic ones, but sometimes it's not about skill. Sometimes it's about connection." "Connection," the Queen repeated as if tasting the word. She hesitated for a long moment, then slowly held the child out. "Very well, human. Try." The baby's mental cry hit Elias like a wave. He almost stumbled, but he steadied himself, holding the small, trembling body close. The infant's skin was warm, almost too warm, and Elias could feel the rapid heartbeat through the tiny chest. He remembered his niece back on Earth, how she used to cry for hours unless someone hummed softly to her. He remembered his grandmother's lullabies. Simple, repetitive, soothing, not logical, not clinical, just human. He began to hum, a low, steady tone. Then he rocked the baby gently, side to side. The baby's wails faltered for half a second, then rose again. But Elias didn't stop. He spoke in a calm, steady voice. "It's okay. You're safe. Nothing's going to hurt you. Just breathe, little one." The alien nobles stared, confused. Why was the human talking to the baby? Words meant nothing to an infant. But the Queen watched intently. Elias felt the psychic pressure slowly soften. The baby's fists unclenched. The cries became shorter, more like whimpers. Elias kept humming, kept rocking, his hand lightly patting the child's back. Finally, after what felt like hours, the little prince gave a long, shaky sigh. His eyelids drooped. And then, silence. The psychic noise faded from Elias's mind like a storm drifting away. The Queen's eyes widened, the first true crack in her usual control. "He sleeps." A ripple of murmurs spread through the hall. The healers stared as if Elias had just performed magic. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. This human had done what none of them could. Elias carefully handed the sleeping child back to the Queen. She took him gently, almost protectively, her long fingers brushing the infant's hair. "You have done more than calm my son," she said, her voice quieter now. "You have restored my honor in the eyes of the galaxy." Elias shrugged. "I just did what any human would do." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "You may have just saved the throne." Elias felt every alien eye on him, and in that instant he knew his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to understand. The Queen's private chambers were nothing like the cold, perfect symmetry of the public palace. Here, the walls curved in gentle arcs, lit with soft blue lights. Fountains whispered in the corners, sending ripples through pools of silver water. The air was warm, scented faintly of something like cinnamon. Elias stood awkwardly near the center, unsure if he should sit or keep standing. He still couldn't believe where he was. Inside the royal quarters of the most guarded ruler in 3 systems. Queen Serenia sat in a reclining chair carved from a single crystal, the infant prince resting in her arms. The child's breathing was slow and peaceful now, tiny chest rising and falling. Every few seconds, the baby's small fingers twitched, as if chasing dreams. "You interest me, human," the Queen said without looking up. Her voice was softer than in the hall, but still carried the weight of command. "Your species is young, You have little in the way of technology compared to the old powers. Yet you calmed my son when my own healers failed. Elias cleared his throat. With respect, Your Majesty, I don't think it's about species. I just tried to connect. Hold him close. Let him know I was there. The Queen tilted her head, studying him. Connection. You used that word before. Among my people, infants are cared for, yes, but they are not bonded with in such ways. We provide for them, but we do not coddle them. Elias smiled faintly. On Earth, it's the opposite. We pick them up, sing to them, talk to them, even if they don't understand the words. It's instinct. She looked down at her child, her silver hair falling forward like a curtain. My son's father was not Ophilar. He came from a distant colony world. The prince's mind, it feels more than it should. Perhaps that is why he suffers. Elias hesitated. I think he's sensing emotions. The whole time in the hall, I could feel his panic. It wasn't just noise, it was in my head. Maybe he can't block out what's around him. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. You believe his crying is not simply discomfort, but a reaction to the emotions of others? Yes. The hall was tense. Everyone was watching you. Some were judging you. I think he picked it up. Babies. Human babies, at least. They react to what they feel from their parents. If you're stressed, they're stressed. The Queen leaned back, thoughtful. If what you say is true, my son's gift is also his curse. A small sound came from the prince. A quiet whimper. His face scrunched for a moment, then relaxed again. Elias stepped forward slightly. May I? He asked, gesturing to the child. Serenia hesitated. Then, with surprising trust, she placed the baby back into Elias's arms. Elias adjusted his hold, cradling the small body against his chest. The baby shifted, eyes fluttering open just enough to see his new position. Elias began to hum again. Not loudly, just enough for the sound to vibrate through his chest. He swayed gently from side to side, as he had done with his niece years ago. The Queen watched, silent. See? Elias murmured after a minute. He relaxes when he hears a steady rhythm. It's like telling his mind, everything's okay. The Queen's gaze was unreadable. You speak as though you have done this many times. I used to babysit for my sister, Elias said with a faint laugh. Her twins were loud. I had to get creative. Rocking, humming, even telling nonsense stories helped. Nonsense. Stories, Serenia repeated, tasting the words. We do not tell such things to children. That's a shame, Elias said gently. Stories aren't just for entertainment. They're comfort. A way to remind someone they're not alone. The Queen was silent for a long time. Outside, faint music from the city below drifted through the open balcony. Elias kept humming, feeling the baby's small heartbeat slow. Eventually, Serenia spoke again. When I made my promise in the hall, it was partly desperation, partly political calculation. I did not truly expect anyone to succeed. I figured, Elias said quietly. But now, the Queen continued, I am faced with something more troubling. You have done in moments what my own kind could not. If this becomes known, some will see it as weakness in our traditions. Others may see it as proof that outsiders have value we have ignored. Elias gave a small shrug. Maybe both are true. The Queen's lips curved into something that might have been the faintest smile. Perhaps. She rose gracefully and walked toward a small table. A servant approached silently, placing 2 cups of a glowing, golden drink before them. Serenia took one and gestured for Elias to take the other. He hesitated. Is this safe for humans? It is mild, she said, and symbolic. A shared drink in my quarters is a sign of trust. Elias accepted. The liquid was warm, with a flavor like honey and spice. As he drank, he noticed the Queen watching him with an intensity that made him shift in his seat. You said connection is instinct for humans, she said at last. Do you believe such instinct can be taught to those without it? Elias thought for a moment. Maybe not taught exactly, but encouraged. It's about letting yourself feel, dropping the walls. The Ophilar do not drop walls, Serenia said firmly. Walls are what have kept our empire intact for centuries. Elias glanced down at the prince. Then maybe he's here to teach you when to lower them. The Queen's eyes softened, just barely. She reached out and brushed the child's hair. You speak boldly, human. Blame Earth, Elias said with a small grin. We tend to talk too much. For a moment, the room was still. The fountains whispered. The baby breathed softly, and the Queen studied him as if weighing a decision far larger than the two of them. Then a chime rang from the door. An attendant entered, bowing low. Your Majesty, the Council requests an update on the young prince's condition. Serenia's gaze never left Elias. Tell them he rests, and tell them he rests because of the human. The attendant's eyes flickered with surprise but obeyed without question. When they were alone again, the Queen spoke in a low voice. You may not realize it, but you have already become part of my court's political game. Some will want you close. Others will want you gone. Elias raised an eyebrow. Because I held a baby? Because you succeeded where they could not, Serenia said simply. The baby stirred again, and Elias began humming once more, the melody filling the warm air. The Queen's gaze softened in a way that no one in the galaxy would believe unless they saw it for themselves. After a while, she said quietly, Perhaps this is the beginning of a different kind of alliance. Elias glanced at her, unsure if she meant between their species or something far more personal. The next morning, Elias was woken by the soft chime of the palace's internal comm system. A polite but firm voice said, The Queen requests your presence in the inner sanctum. He rubbed his eyes, still half in a dream. His guest quarters were far nicer than anything he'd ever stayed in. Soft bedding, walls that shimmered with faint starlight, and a view of the city below, its towers glowing with pale blue light. But as comfortable as it was, he hadn't slept much. His mind kept replaying the image of the Queen's face when the baby finally slept. By the time he arrived at the inner sanctum, 2 royal guards stood waiting. Their silver armor glimmered under the dim light. Without a word, they opened the tall crystalline doors. Inside, the room felt different from the rest of the palace. The walls were lined with tall shelves filled with strange objects, relics, old scrolls, glowing stones that pulsed with soft light. In the center, Queen Serenia sat at a low table. The prince was in a small, elegant cradle beside her, still sleeping. Sit, she said simply. Elias obeyed, taking the seat opposite her. For a moment, she studied him in silence. Then she spoke. What you said yesterday, about my son feeling the emotions of those around him, it is more than you realize. Elias leaned forward. Go on. She touched the cradle lightly, her long fingers brushing the infant's cheek. The truth of his condition is known only to a few in my court. My son was born with a rare and dangerous gift, the deep sense. It is not just empathy. It is complete awareness of the emotional and mental states of those around him. Every fear, every doubt, every hostile thought, he feels it all. Elias frowned. That explains why the hall upset him so much. It is more than upset, Serenia said softly. For one so young, the storm of emotions from a crowded room is overwhelming. It can damage his mind before it even develops. That is why he has never been outside my chambers for more than minutes at a time. Yesterday was the longest he has ever been among so many people. Elias's voice was low. And you brought him out during the summit to show strength. The Queen's silver eyes locked on him. Yes, my enemies have been waiting for a sign of weakness. If they sense that my heir is vulnerable, they will move against me. Against him. Elias understood now. This wasn't just about a fussy baby. This was about survival. Not just for the child, but for the stability of an entire empire. Why? Tell me this? He asked carefully. Serenya's voice dropped even lower. Because yesterday, you shielded him. Without knowing it, you created an emotional barrier. Your calm, your strange human warmth, kept the flood of feelings from drowning. Him! My people do not know how to do this. We do not live with our emotions as you do. We keep them locked away, controlled, hidden. That control means we have no shield to offer. Elias blinked. You're saying he needs someone like me around him? Yes, the Queen said simply. And that is why I am conflicted. Elias gave a half smile. Conflicted about what? Her eyes narrowed slightly. If I keep you near, some will see it as favoritism toward an outsider. Others will suspect political motives. And there is the matter of my promise. Elias's heart skipped. The marriage offer? I made it in desperation, Serenya admitted. But in Ophalar tradition, a promise made before the court is binding if accepted. If I withdraw it, I appear dishonorable. If I honor it, I risk political chaos. And yet, sending you away now would leave my son unprotected. Elias leaned back, exhaling slowly. That's quite a problem. The Queen's expression did not change. It is. Just then, the prince stirred in the cradle. His little hands flexed, and Elias felt it, the faint, invisible pressure in his mind, like a ripple across still water. A few moments later, he sensed something else, not from the child, but from beyond the room. He turned toward the doorway. A faint, sharp feeling brushed against his thoughts, distrust, and something darker. It was gone in a blink, but Elias knew it wasn't his imagination. Someone's outside, he said quietly. The Queen's gaze sharpened. You felt it? Yeah. Like someone with bad intentions. Serenya rose and crossed to the door. She opened it suddenly, and the two guards standing there straightened. One of them, a tall Ophalar with a pale scar across his face, avoided her gaze. Commander Vale, she said, her tone icy. Is there a reason you were listening? I was ensuring the human was not a threat, the guard replied stiffly. Your concern is noted, Serenya said coldly. But you will remain at your post, outside, always. The guard bowed and stepped back, but Elias caught the flicker of hostility in his eyes. When the door shut, the Queen turned back to Elias. You are already being watched. Elias gave a dry laugh. Feels like home. Politics, just bigger and shinier. For the first time, the Queen actually let out a quiet breath that might have been amusement, but it vanished quickly. I will have you remain in the palace. For now, you will stay near my son during public events. Privately, you will help him learn to manage his gift. You may be the only one who can. Elias hesitated. This isn't just about calming a baby anymore, is it? No, Serenya said. It is about shaping the future ruler of Ophalar and protecting him from those who would see him removed. The weight of her words sank in. Elias realized this was no small favor. This was a dangerous position, one that could make him powerful or make him a target. Still, when he looked at the sleeping child, the decision felt simple. "All right," he said. "I'll help him." Serenya's eyes softened. "Then we begin now." The next days passed in a strange rhythm. Elias spent hours with the prince, carrying him through quiet palace gardens, humming songs from Earth, even telling soft nonsense stories that made no sense to anyone but him. The baby seemed calmer, sleeping more, crying less. At first, the queen observed from a distance, her expression unreadable. But over time, she began to join in, not with stories or songs, but simply by being present, watching her son's reactions. Elias noticed she stood a little closer each day, but not everyone in the palace was pleased. Servants whispered as Elias passed. Guards gave him measuring looks. He often felt the prickling sensation of being watched from shadows. One evening, while walking the garden paths with the prince in his arms, Elias spotted the same scarred guard, Commander Vale, speaking in low tones to a robed figure near the outer wall. When they noticed Elias, the conversation stopped instantly. Later that night, as Elias laid the baby in the cradle, Serenya entered. She looked tired, something he hadn't seen before. "You've noticed," she said quietly. "Yeah," Elias replied. "Vale doesn't like me." "Vale does not like anyone who disrupts the order he understands," she said. "And you human are disruption given form." Elias smirked. "That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me here, but the queen didn't smile. Be careful. The deeper you are woven into my court, the more dangerous the threads become. And now, there is no going back." Her words stayed with him long after she left. He looked down at the sleeping prince, wondering if the little one could feel the tension building in the palace walls. Because Elias could. The day of the coronation anniversary arrived like a brewing storm. From the balcony of his guest chamber, Elias could see the city alive with activity. Towering spires shimmered under morning light. Processions of robed citizens filled the wide streets, carrying banners of silver and deep violet, the colors of the Ophalar royal house. The palace itself was a hive of motion. Servants moved quickly, arranging crystal ornaments, placing glowing lanterns along the great halls. Guards, in polished armor, took their posts, their weapons gleaming. The whole empire would be watching the queen today, and for the first time since the disastrous summit, the crown prince would be seen in public again. In the queen's private chambers, Elias adjusted the light cloak she had given him. It was formal by human standards, but far simpler than the royal robes worn by her court. He glanced at the small bundle in his arms. The prince, dressed in ceremonial silks, his silver eyes blinking sleepily. "Remember," Serenya said, fastening the last clasp on her gown, "you will stand close. The moment you sense distress in him, act. Do not wait for my signal." Elias nodded. "Got it. Keep him calm. Keep him safe." She looked at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "There is more to this than calm, human. Today is as much a battle as any fought with weapons. My enemies will try to prove that my son, and by extension my rule, is weak. If they succeed, it will invite open challenge to the throne." Elias glanced down at the baby. "Then let's make—" "Sure they don't." The grand processional hall was enormous, its arched ceiling painted with scenes of past rulers. Hundreds of nobles lined the walls, their voices a soft hum of conversation. At the far end stood the coronation dais, a raised platform where the queen would address the empire. Elias walked beside Serenya as they entered, the baby cradled in his arms. Every eye turned toward them. Some faces showed curiosity, others outright hostility. Whispers rippled through the hall at the sight of a human carrying the royal heir. He ignored them. They reached the dais, and Serenia stepped forward to speak. Her voice carried effortlessly, rich and commanding. She spoke of unity, of the Empire's history, of a future where strength and wisdom guided all. The words flowed like practiced music. Elias shifted his attention to the prince. The baby was calm for now, but Elias could feel the faint pressure at the edges of his mind, the early signs of psychic strain. He hummed softly under his breath, just enough for the child to hear. That's when he felt it, a sharp spike of hostility, not from the crowd as a whole, but from somewhere specific. Far back in the hall, it was like a shard of ice stabbing into his thoughts. The baby twitched in his arms and let out a small whimper. Elias scanned the room. His eyes found a figure among the nobles, tall, robed in crimson, head slightly bowed. The pressure in Elias's head pulsed stronger whenever his gaze landed on them. The queen continued speaking, unaware. Elias swayed gently, keeping his humming steady, but the psychic pressure grew sharper, pressing into the prince's mind. The baby's face tightened, his small hands curling. Elias knew he had seconds before the crying started, before the attack succeeded in making the queen look powerless. He moved. Instead of freezing or calling for help, Elias began speaking. In a clear, warm voice, loud enough for the nearest nobles to hear, and for the prince to focus on. "Did I ever tell you the story of the moon rabbit?" he said softly to the baby. "Back home they say there's a little rabbit who lives on the moon, making sweets for everyone. Silly, right? But one day—" His tone shifted into the rhythm of a story, his voice painting pictures of strange human myths. The prince blinked up at him, momentarily distracted, the whimper fading to a soft breath. The psychic pressure wavered. Whoever was trying to provoke the child had lost their grip. Elias didn't stop. He spun the tale bigger and brighter, of rabbits leaping between stars, of cakes made from stardust, of laughter echoing in space. He could feel the crowd's confusion, but that didn't matter. The baby stayed calm. Then he saw movement at the back. The robed figure turned and slipped toward a side exit. When the queen finished her speech, she stepped back toward Elias. One glance at the prince, still resting peacefully, made her eyes narrow in something like approval. "You felt it, didn't you?" she murmured as the applause echoed. "Yeah," Elias said, "and I saw them leave." Her voice hardened. "Describe them." Elias did, and she gave the smallest nod to one of her guards. The guard vanished into the crowd. They stepped down from the dais together, the queen walking with regal calm, Elias following close with the baby. Outwardly, it looked like nothing unusual had happened. But Elias could feel the air around them shift. Some nobles looked impressed, others wary. Later, in a quiet chamber away from the noise of the celebration, the queen dismissed her attendants and turned to Elias. "You acted without hesitation," she said, "and you kept your focus where it mattered." Elias shrugged. "It's not complicated. You protect the kid, you win the day." She gave him a long look. "Most in my court would not agree. They would protect the crown above the child. But you place the child above the crown." Elias met her gaze. "A crown's just metal and jewels. This," he looked down at the sleeping prince, "this is the future." The queen's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "I will not forget what happened today." The guard returned hours later with news. The robed figure had slipped away before they could be caught. No identity confirmed, but the queen didn't need confirmation. "It was a test," she said. "Someone probing to see if my son could be broken in public. They have their answer now," Elias asked. "And what's that?" "That the boy is not alone," Serenia said simply. That night, Elias stood on his balcony, looking out over the city's lights. Somewhere behind him, the prince slept in his cradle, and the queen spoke quietly with her advisors in the next room. The thought settled in Elias's mind like a heavy stone. This wasn't going to end with one public victory. Whoever was behind, the attack would try again, and next time, it might not just be psychic tricks. But he also knew something else. They'd have to get through him first. 3 days after the coronation anniversary, the palace felt different. Guards patrolled more often, their eyes sharper. Servants whispered in corners. Even the nobles visiting the queen spoke with extra caution, as if the air itself carried tension. Elias could feel it. The attempted psychic attack had shaken the royal court. Not everyone believed the danger was real, but those who did now saw him as more than just a human guest. He was part of the queen's inner circle, and that made him a target. In the nursery, Elias sat cross-legged on the floor, rolling a small carved sphere back and forth to the prince. The baby giggled, chasing it with clumsy hands. "You're getting faster," Elias said with a grin. "Pretty soon you'll be crawling all over the place. Then I'm in trouble." The door slid open and Serenia entered, her long gown brushing the floor. She watched them for a moment, her face unreadable. "He laughs more with you than with anyone else," she said. Elias shrugged. "Maybe he likes my stories. Or maybe he likes that you see him as a child, not just an heir." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Elias, I will speak plainly. My enemies are growing bolder. Yesterday, a patrol intercepted a group carrying weapons near the palace walls. They claim to be merchants. I do not believe them." Elias's jaw tightened. "So they're coming for the kid again." "They may be coming for both of us," she said. "And this is why I must now decide whether to keep my promise." Elias looked up sharply. "The marriage thing?" "Yes," Serenia said. "I told you, if you could soothe my child when none else could, I would take you as my consort. It was partly a test. But now, it may be the only way to secure your position here. If you remain a guest, my enemies can push you out. If you become part of the royal family, removing you would be far more difficult." Elias didn't answer right away. He picked up the ball again, handing it back to the baby, who squealed. "Happily, you're asking me to marry into an alien royal family," he said at last. "That's not exactly something I can just nod to like ordering coffee." "I know," Serenia replied, "and I do not ask for an answer this moment. But you must understand, my son's safety is bound to yours now. You've proven that. If you leave, I cannot promise he will remain unharmed." Her voice softened, almost hesitant. "And I do not wish for you to leave." Elias glanced at her. Her face was still calm, regal, but there was something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He paced the balcony, the city lights twinkling far below. Marriage to an alien queen, on a world half a galaxy from Earth. He thought of his life before, quiet days, ordinary work, nothing that prepared him for politics or royal intrigue. Yet here he was, caught in the center of a power struggle that could decide the fate of an empire. And the kid, the tiny, silver-eyed prince who trusted him completely. Leaving would mean abandoning him. Staying meant stepping into a role he wasn't sure he could fill. The next day, Elias got his answer in a way he didn't expect. It happened in the Hall of Petitions, where citizens and nobles brought their requests before the queen. Elias had been sitting at the side, the prince in his lap, while Serenia listened to a merchant speak about trade routes. Then, a sound cut through the chamber, the unmistakable crack of a weapon discharge. Elias's body moved before his mind caught. Up, he twisted, shielding the baby, scanning for the threat. Guards shouted. The crowd panicked. From the upper balcony, a figure aimed a long, sleek weapon directly at the queen. Elias didn't think. He acted. With one arm holding the prince tight, He lunged forward, slamming into Serenia just as the weapon fired. The bolt of energy hissed through the air where her head had been a second earlier, scorching the marble floor. Guards returned fire. The would-be assassin collapsed, weapon clattering from their hands. In the chaos, Elias checked the prince, unharmed. Then he looked at the queen. She was breathing hard, staring at him with something like shock. "You!" she began. "Yeah," Elias said, still catching his breath. "Guess I'm not just good at babysitting." The attack was over in minutes, but its effect was immediate. The court had seen it with their own eyes. A human risking himself to save the queen and her child. That evening, Serenia came to his quarters. No guards, no attendants, just her. "I no longer ask," she said quietly. "I declare, you will be my consort." Elias blinked. "You're not even gonna let me say no?" She stepped closer. "You have already chosen, Elias. Every time you place yourself between my son and danger, every time you face my enemies without hesitation, you choose to be part of us." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed softly. "You know, back home I couldn't even keep a cactus alive. Now I'm protecting alien royalty." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You are more suited to this than you think." The wedding, or its alien equivalent, happened quickly by royal standards. No grand public ceremony, just a formal binding witnessed by the court and the high priestess. Elias stood beside Serenia, the prince in her arms. When the ritual ended, the queen placed her free hand on his shoulder and said, "From this day you are one with the throne." The nobles bowed, some out of respect, some out of calculation. But Elias noticed something else in their eyes, a new wariness. Weeks later, the city began to settle again. The attack slowed. Whispers of unrest faded, replaced by rumors of the human consort who had saved the royal heir not once but twice. In the royal gardens, Elias sat on a stone bench, the prince crawling in the grass beside him. Serenia joined them, her gown brushing the flowers as she sat. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly. Elias looked at her. "Regret what?" "Choosing to stay. Choosing us." He shook his head. "Not even a little. Sure, it's dangerous, but so is every good thing I ever did in my life. And besides," he glanced at the prince, "I think the little guy would miss me." Serenia's eyes softened. "As would I." That night, as the palace lights dimmed and the stars spread across the alien sky, Elias stood on the balcony once more. He had come here as an outsider. He stayed because of a child. And now he was part of something far larger, a family, a throne, and a kingdom that might one day depend on him as much as it did on the queen. The galaxy was still dangerous. Enemies still lurked in the shadows. But for the first time, Elias felt ready, because whatever came next, he wouldn't be facing it alone.